I counted on LinkedIn right before this call 11 gaming studios, and I think the other two places you worked were the cartoonist.
My career actually got started pretty soon, like when I was just 17, and
Wow.
now I'm gonna touch 40.
And you've worked at some very different studios like Rovio, Finnish Culture, King, but the Spanish version.
The values were very different. They surprised me by a lot.
Is there any lessons you've learned about being a great leader that you wish you learned sooner?
Decision making, I think, and that is a difficult thing to actually teach anyone.
I think that's important to reiterate. You were an unofficial art lead before you got the promotion. So
Always, I think this is always the case, yeah.
Kshiraj, welcome. So I want to start with how we met actually in person, which was in Dubai. Do you mind telling us that story? Because I think it was quite funny.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I was really excited when I saw that you're coming over as well, because going to that conference, I mean, I know that it's a bit small and this was the second time they were doing in Dubai. I wasn't really expecting like known faces. And then Ida was coming over, you were coming over, a couple of more people I knew. So it was nice. And thanks for taking out time, by the way. I think we had some great exchanges about like how we have been doing these podcasts and stuff like this. So a lot of stuff that we have been doing were exciting and motivating. So thanks a lot
Yeah,
for
it
that.
was loads of stuff we could talk about. So for the benefit of the audience, could you just tell us a little bit about like a typical day of what you're up to? I know you mentioned you have a podcast as well. So yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I work in the mobile game industry, and I'm the art director right now at Moon Active. Before that, like I'm currently living in India, but before that, I lived in Europe. So I worked at King for 4 years, and then 2 years in Helsinki in Finland, and I worked at Rovio back then. So my career has started as a cartoonist earlier, and then I went on to become an animator, and then I got into games. I've done a lot actually. Like also for a while, I worked as a web artist and made flash games and websites and graphic designs and stuff like this. But eventually, I went into games, and then I continued to be here. And yeah, right now my job is basically to work with some tremendously talented artists and just work with them, guide them, take whatever the vision for the company is for the products and make sure they happen. And apart from this, right now I'm not very socially active. Like earlier, I used to have a lot of personal projects going around, but right now, whenever I have some free time, I dedicate it to my family. But just like 6 months ago, maybe I felt like giving back to the industry. So I started a podcast called Doodles to Downloads, which is basically aimed at game art. And I generally have some guests come over and they share their insights and ask them questions. So yeah.
Yeah. Super high quality podcast, and it's the only reason that I have a video podcast. If anyone sees the two episodes, they can see that I've very shamelessly been very inspired by it because I love the format. So yeah, great podcast. If anyone's listening to this in the art world, 100% go there. And I want to highlight, like I counted on LinkedIn right before this call, 11 gaming studios, and I think the other two places you worked were the cartoonist. So like 11 is just such a huge number, and all doing art.
Yeah, well, I was actually, when I completed my schooling, I did not want to start my job, and I came down to Delhi to probably do a graduation on some art programs or something like this. And then a company hired me as an illustrator. So my career actually got started pretty soon, like when I was just 17, and
Wow.
now I'm gonna touch 40. So, which is why I like tons of places. And when you're very young, sometimes like you don't generally look for a lot of criteria in order to join. Someone is just giving a little bump to the salary and then you move because maybe you can buy another book because of a new salary. So so I hopped a lot. From one place to the other, but it also allowed me to expose to different mentalities, different work methods, and help me make my selection on what I like and what I don't like.
Yeah, and you've worked at some very different studios like Rovio, Finnish Culture, King, but the Spanish version, so a bit of Swedish and kind of Spain culture, and some big names as well. So loads to dive into.
Well, back in India, I think when I was here, it was pretty much like an American culture, let's say. India is a very a company driven by outsourcing. Of course, right now there are lots of companies which are making product at the moment. But back in those days, like at least when I had my start of my career, the most where India was popular was for outsourcing the work and having huge art teams like 100, 200 artists that can pull off work for lots of AAA games. And that's where I was. So the culture was very American with the run fast, try to get results, like hardworking and everything. When I moved to Spain, and that was also maybe, of course, the first company where I worked on product and not services. I think my perspective changed. Like King was an amazing company to work with, and Swedish culture, like you said. So the values were very different. They surprised me by a lot. Like during my interview, I was asked about a question on if you have something where you are unable to finish the work and the work is getting delayed or it's not coming out well, what would you do? And my natural answer was, I'll work overnight or maybe I'll stay longer in the studio. And they said that this is not allowed. Then what would you do? So yeah, imagine like how the difference of the culture was. And I think Finnish culture was also pretty different in many ways. And I think this allowed me to learn a lot of different outlook at work, perspective at work, stuff like this, and change me and make me become the person I'm right now.
For sure. And there's so many different variations, I feel, of art depending on the studio you are, not alone the culture. So I would like to start with what's a typical day for you now at Moon Active as an art director?
Hmm. So great question. So basically, right now we have a remote team at the moment, the one that I lead at least. Of course, we have some people who are based on the head office and also some more branch offices, like we have one in London, for example. So there are some people who come down to the office and work from there. But apart from it, it's a very remote team. That also means we are very globally distributed. So there's one person who starts from Vietnam, and then it comes over to India, where we are three people, including myself, and then it goes to the Europe region where we have people in Ukraine, in Tel Aviv, in London, and then also in Barcelona, in Spain, and then it goes to Brazil and to America. So the first job for me is to basically make sure that we are all connected in a system, in a pipeline, and how we operate. My general job is to basically art direct the entire team, but I don't do that all alone because it might be super hard to be available for everyone. And especially when you're remote, sometimes you have to chronologically be available to people depending on who wrote to you first. I think that becomes the biggest challenge where multiple artists are working on some stuff and they require your input. They have sent you something on Slack, but you're the only option for you is to do meetings with them, but you can only meet them one by one. So this is where it gets harder, right? Like I don't like people to wait for even a couple of hours if they are waiting for me to just respond to a very small thing. And therefore there is a like a little structure that we have done where a couple of game leads and like art leads in the team as well, and they generally also take care of certain segment of work. Overall, my job is to make sure the vision for the product, like about what we are trying to achieve as an art team, is getting fulfilled. But apart from that, I also look upon onto lots of culture related things. So I make sure that we as a team feel connected. We learn a lot from each other. We are happy at work. I ensure that people have good work life balance. Offer them the flexibility, offer them the freedom to express themselves, to share the concerns, and basically to unblock them, to unleash their productivity. And apart from this, whenever there's an opportunity, if I can be hands on, so I try to do that. It generally gets harder as you go further in your career ladder and you're more like a manager person. And of course, when you have a really talented team, um, but it's also important sometimes, right? Like you could when you are actually being able to do hands on, you can inspire your people in a very different way because they see that, yeah, like someone did an art and I was impressed, so I take that as a right leader. So in that case, I think generally from time to time there's always good to create some sort of opportunities in whatever craft, like trying to find an opportunity to be hands on. So I generally try to balance that. Sometimes it's 50% in a day, sometimes it's even 0% in a day. But overall, in a nutshell, try to be hands on. Yeah.
Very nice. The thing I wanted to touch on there is the fact that you're hands on, but you want to be hands on, I guess, more, but you can't. You mentioned one point. You said that it's hard for a lead to get more into the art during your career, but when I was looking at your LinkedIn, you actually went from lead to artist at King. So how did that feel? Like you went from being a leader to then going to an individual contributor again, and then it took a couple of years before I noticed you became a lead again. So how did that actually feel? Like why did that happen?
Yeah, that was the objective when we decided, like me and my wife decided to move out from India, because frankly speaking, I think I was a bit lucky and maybe a bit too lucky in order to become an art lead very soon in my career. I think I ended up into some companies where they did not have more senior people than me. And when they saw my abilities to manage, lead, guide, even be the most principal artist among everyone else, like more senior, even though my career was just like 3 years old or whatever, I got promoted to be an art lead much more sooner in India. And then as a result of this, until the last time when I was in India, uh, before we moved to Europe, I was also the founder of a studio. And unlike like how it happens in Europe, for example, where you can challenge your lead or you can go against them or you can question them, that was not the culture in India. Like here, people who are higher up, they just follow whatever like the higher ups are saying to them, even if they're right or wrong. And that was my problem. Like I was the co-founder of the studio, and despite having a talented art team, whenever I told them something, they always just followed whatever I was asking them, and they would barely ever give me any comment about, hey, no, you're wrong, maybe we should do it like this. And this is what made me feel that maybe I'm not learning enough. I think I need people who can probably be very let's say open and honest about when I'm wrong, because otherwise I'm stopping myself. So I thought with my wife that let's probably like, we are on more on the giving side and maybe we have to be a bit more on the taking side. So I want to go with an empty glass and fill it up. So when we decided that let's try to apply, I went on to apply with like less leadership roles and just to be a person who could put a bit of like a headphones on top and just sit and draw. So that way, I picked up the opportunity at King, and the initial years were very nice that way. But then overall, as it went further and further, it brought me some more opportunities to continue to exercise my other part, which was more on the management and leadership. And then I continued on.
Amazing. And then you moved again, right? You moved from Spain to Rovio. Was that in a different country, if I'm right?
Yeah. So I was at King for 4 years in Spain, and even in those 4 years, I moved a lot internally within King. I think King is one of those companies where um, internal promotions happen, you're rewarded, all of those things. So in a way, you can expect that your career path is also moving while you are there. Like there were structures where you have your development plan, your hierarchies, and okay, now you're artist, you can be a senior artist afterward, then you can be a principal or expert, and then you can take the path of leadership. So in a way, the organization was not stagnant for people who were there, and they promoted these kind of opportunities for people who were interested, of course. So that happened, and also King, we had something called like a central art team, and that was a great concept. I don't know whether it exists right now. Maybe it does, but essentially that team was not part of one game studio, but supporting all the different studios. And I think that was very pivotal for me, because by just being at King for like 3 years or 2 years of remaining span, I got exposed to all the different game teams at King, from Sweden to London to Berlin to whatnot, like in Barcelona as well. And then different game projects had different nature, different leadership, different challenges. So in a very short amount of time, I mean, this is what you want, right? Like sometimes when when you're working on one game, you can end up being on a game for 2 years, 3 years, and of course you learn that way as well. But the central team opportunity was very unique in that way, because we were working on something for 3 months and then another 3 months to another project. So in a way, it allowed me to kind of like expose myself to a lot of variety of work in a short amount of time, and also know different people. Like people from Sweden were very different from the art directors at Barcelona.
Yeah, I can imagine. What was so different about them?
um, I think their approach and thought processes, their culture. The biggest difference, which I'm saying, like from the whole Scandinavian region, also from Finland, for example, people are motivated largely by if they are inspired by the thought. I think this is how they, like when I got the team at Rovio, for example, initially I had to bear a lot of challenge where I thought that, okay, what I know from India, for example, or even from Spain, if the studio head is aligned and the art director is aligned, then the team follows. That's it. Like that's done, right? If the leadership people are clear about what they want to do, the people in the team, they just go and follow. That was not the case when I moved to Finland, and I saw that, okay, here people require something else in order to get motivated and do what you're asking for. So I had to deal with it. It wasn't that I went to the desk of a person and I said like, hey, go and make this, and they would start to do that. Like, no, they would challenge, they will counter question on your choices. And in that case, you have to earn some sort of like a relation as well as respect.
Like trying to get street cred, like okay, you're gonna tell me this, but like, why should I do it? Then you have to like
Yeah,
earn that.
exactly. Exactly. It was super surprising and a bit funny for me as well. And it felt like a blocker. Like, to be very honest, I felt a bit more difficult that way because, like, hey, I have certain targets. I want to reach to them fast. And in that case, I want the team to act upon and they should just go and do it. But no, the people want to have a lot of autonomy. And in that case, it was a bit of challenge. And um, also sometimes like the approach can be very different. Like sometimes you are maybe quality focused versus iterative, so that's another thing. Like I came up from that mindset where at least back at King, for example, I was working with a director from Pixar, and he came from Pixar, and he was the visual development director at King. And working under his leadership, his vision and approach was very Pixar driven. So a lot of care and quality, and until it has been perfected, it didn't move further. So that became my way of working as well. However, when I arrived, I saw that okay, here the team wants to do differently. They want to arrive at good enough, and then they want to put it into the game, and then maybe iterate and iterate. And that's also a very different work method compared to what I came from. So I had to get adjusted to it. And again, coming back from here and again coming to a place like Moonactive, it's more quality focused. Like we are more about perfection. So I had to readjust myself that way.
That's interesting. I didn't expect Moon Active to be that option, like the quality, because they make Coin Master, humongous game. But for some reason, I connected Remote Studio to make the asset and then reiterate it later. But no, you're saying it's quality focused. Do you feel like there is a right way to do art specifically for mobile games? Like, should you have it the quality way where you wait till it's perfect, or do you think it makes sense if it's live ops to put it in the game and then fix it kind of slowly later?
I think every method can work as long as everyone in the studio are aligned about their approach. They should be clear about how they're going to do it. They have to identify that, okay, if we are going to focus on quality, it will block the updates, it will block the progress, but then it will be perfected. And then once we put it into the game, we'll never have to come back as often. Of course, like feedback and changes, even player feedback generally arrives and all of that stuff. But it's just about agreeing on a certain setup. And the other way around can also work, where you are thinking that, okay, fair enough, we will agree on good enough and then we'll put it into the game. But we'll remember that we have to polish and not just leave this product as it is. I think Brawl Stars is a great example, and something that I was following from the early days of development of Brawl Stars. It looked very raw in the very early days when the first prototypes and the stuff was created, versus how the final result of the game is right now today. And I think that they went with this approach where it was not about just aiming to get the final result of what the game looks like right now to create from the very get go. It just gets enhanced and enhanced. They okay, now these are the zones that we can focus on and we should replace.
That's interesting. It makes sense. Like in a mobile game where it's so expensive to test, like I can imagine making that decision where you have to invest so much into making it beautiful and then it flops. You're like, great, thank you, goodbye millions. But if you can do like the 20% version and then it is working, then I guess you could iteratively improve on that later. That seems like it makes sense, like thinking about that example.
Yeah, yeah.
My question is about the art specifically in a mobile gaming studio. You mentioned when it comes to like doing it in an iterative process, but then in my head, you then have like I guess art debt. Like rather than technical debt, you have art debt. Like how do you actually motivate people to work on art debt? Because I imagine as an artist, the motivation is more on creating rather than improving old stuff. Is that ever a challenge?
It is, but I think as much as it might look like challenging, I think overall artists internally want to continue to push and excel. That's also because sometimes, like most artists have this mentality when they go and look back at their older work, they're not proud of it anymore because their skills have improved, approach and their understanding of the world has changed, and they want to polish and improve it. So it may sound difficult, but I think it's not very difficult to inspire people. And even though artists are sensitive and emotional about their work, they are generally in agreement to replace it and discard it. Like, I'm surprised by moments where sometimes some good artists are comfortable with trying something that might fail and we might discard them, but they want to do it. Like that's a really good thing to do, actually, where you are open for experimenting, knowing that some of this stuff might probably get discarded and used or replaced at some point of time. And whenever we have, like in any situation, not just at Moon Active, for example, but any of those moments when you are working with the great set of artists, and you have matured yourself as a product, and you have went further and you realize that, oh no, where we could have improved the way the character designs looked, and maybe we are lacking on, let's say, I don't know, the variety of silhouettes or the level of details or how we have been doing the lighting and stuff like this. And how about if we can create and update them now? I think majority of people are still happy to do that.
Okay, so motivation not as big of an issue then, I guess I imagined.
No, it's the opposite, actually. Like, they will be more embarrassed in the situation where they have put something out in the world where which they are not proud of anymore. So
Hmm,
iterations are part of the pulse of people.
perfect. So you've worked at over 10 gaming studios. So I have a question. What is one thing or process that you thought was like wow that you took with you to all the other studios that was kind of unique and unique way of working?
Hmm. Um, I think there's some wow in almost every different way I have encountered, but the most common wow is, again, the emphasis on culture. I think it's a very powerful tool, and I realized that much later. Of course, when I was very young, I was kind of like a person who just wanted to show off and be a person who would excel, and also with that competitive mindset, and then trying to outshine overall. There were moments where I believed more in myself more than the team. This is when I'm talking about, like, really young in my career days, where I did not knew the importance of teamwork and stuff like this, and doing majority of heavy lifting while the team sat on the bench and they waited, and they know that this was Kshiraj's work, like this was Kshiraj's project, and 80% influence was from there. Today I'm more like a school teacher who is generally proud of what the students are doing successfully, and their success is the school teacher success, like a very general university or school kind of metaphor. Um, so the moment when that kind of like mindset changed, and then I realized that, okay, the what a team can achieve overall is always going to be higher than what an individual can. So how do I enable it? What do I do that? But that cultivated lots of like tools at work, about giving them, trusting them. First of all, it starts from there, like basically um, telling them that, hey, I trust in you and in your decisions and how you're going to do it. um, it's also about taking opinion from them. That's sometimes which surprises the team members a lot, when they submit something and then you go back and ask them, like, okay, what do you like? What are your reasons? And then this is where people feel valued, where they can really feel, oh wow, this person is looking for my opinion, and then they share about it. You can ask about, like, what were the thoughts. I mean, I encourage people to come and express this as a pitch, not just like submit something and choose something. Like, please tell me, which one do you support, which one do you want to go ahead with? And also making sure that they're all empowered, so they have the right mindset, they have the right time frame. So a lot of movement actually involves fighting for them, fighting against anything that is gonna affect their motivation or whatever. Sometimes there are certain business decisions that get made in any companies which can probably be problematic for people, even if they know about them. So as a leader, sometimes you have to absorb them and then just keep them to yourself, because if you're just a person who will just go and open up within your team to be honest about everything that's going around, maybe those smaller incremental problems that they will continue to see, that will demotivate them on a longer go. So a lot of moments where I have to just keep some sort of bad truth of the industry to myself on whatever is happening in the company, so that the people don't feel that like you have to be like a shield for them. So that way, I think maintaining a culture where people are empowered, supported, trusted, um, even letting them fail and making them know that if you fail, that's also okay. I think that's a very important thing. You don't have to always perform. You have to tell them that, like, yeah, it's fine. Like, you couldn't be productive today. That's okay. No worries. It's not gonna affect you.
That team mentality versus the individual contributor is such a big hack. I feel as soon as you start thinking like that, like I feel everyone is contributing more on their own, and then it's a weird paradox where you start to think about working with the team as a collective. You'd think that potentially might limit your ability, but it actually does, because hopefully the tide keeps us all up and raises everyone up.
Yeah. Also, there's a little principle that I actually came across from Huberman's podcast, Dr. Huberman, and that was, I don't know if you have ever listened to him or
I've
checked his
emulated
episode.
this podcast over Andrew Huberman because in
Oh,
my
really?
idea, I want to make the Huberman Lab version for the gaming industry. So this will be about art direction and remote work, let's say. Then I can have one on recruitment, and then hopefully the thumbnails are like, I want to learn about this today. So yes, I do know him and I do really like it.
Amazing. So maybe you might have already checked out that episode, but that episode had a big impact on my style of work. It's about growth mindset. I don't know if you have seen it, but no, like whoever is listening to this podcast, if you haven't checked that episode, check it out, because it's like 1 hour of knowledge, great stuff for leadership. And the simple concept about growth mindset, as he describes, and of course, that's also the concept, is where you are appreciating more of people's effort more than individuals themselves. And it's a very small thing, but it has a big, big impact. So if an artist in the team does great character design, I don't no longer go and say that, hey, you are an amazing character designer. Or, I mean, sometimes it can be nice to say that, but like how it described on the podcast, it basically stops people from progressing. So you have to actually appreciate their effort more than their what they have accomplished as individuals. So you have to say, oh yeah, you did some great effort on, or even you don't need to use the word effort. Like you can just say, oh yeah, you played around really nice with some proportions and shapes, and I think you tried a lot with great options. So great. And this is where you are appreciating their effort more than calling them and labeling them that you are great or you are fantastic and stuff like this. And I think that style, when adopted, can really have nice consequences on your team, where they feel motivated to keep doing that effort rather than thinking that, okay, they have accomplished and they are already the best artist, for example.
Yeah, it's like you're putting them in a box by giving them that compliment, I feel, right? And that's what you said. You can kind of hopefully unlock them and give them the gift of being able to do other stuff. I really like that
Yeah. Yeah.
shift. I haven't listened to it. I just searched it. And for everyone listening, so if you just search Andrew Huberman growth mindset, it's the
Yeah.
first thing that comes up.
I'll send you the link maybe if you want to add to the description. So we can
It
do
is
that.
in the description. Nice. Good idea. Fantastic. So I want to move on to the talk you did at PGC in Dubai. You called it the virtual studio. So this is the first studio that's fully remote. So what is the virtual studio? Like, what was the main takeaway you got from like putting that talk together?
Yeah. So when I was coming over to the Pocket Gamers event, I was trying to decide with Charlie about what topic can I talk about, and I just gave him some options, out of which one of those was related to how we lead the team here at Moon Active, working remotely, and all of that stuff. And I think the topic was exciting for him, so he said, like, let's maybe do around this one. So the talk is basically centered around how we currently, after COVID, and how we have been globally distributed, have been successful enough as a team and have achieved a lot of stuff which are probably even not possible when you are face to face. And that was a big challenge, because I wanted to compare. And of course, there are lots of benefits when you are face to face and when you can work in the studio. But I wanted to cover off for some uniqueness which are generally only possible when you're all remote. And this was based on my own life experiences, to be very honest. I think I mean, now maybe the remote work is a bit obsolete topic. Like lots of studios have called for back to work and stuff like this. Of course, there are still many studios which are operating remote work, but I'm not sure whether this is going to be the only future or forever future or going to grow from here. Let's see how the time rolls out. But when COVID happened and all of that situation happened, it was really difficult, right? Like for all of us trying to find new ways on how we can work. And I was a very social artist. I was someone who used to organize lots of sketching events in the city when I was living in Barcelona. I used to host this club called Sketch Bomb Barcelona, which was about artists from the city coming over and drawing together. We almost did it every couple of weeks, and it was so frequent. Also going to lots of live drawing events and stuff. So my signature work, like my style or my identity, was tied up to being a very social artist. That was also my biggest strength because artists are introverts and I was a very extrovert person. I didn't mind speaking in front of 100 people. So all of those were my biggest tools and strength. And then when COVID happened, it was just like, oh my God, what do I do now? Like how can I remain as a leader now with all my wings, like all my strength have been cut down, and things like this happen. And then I got exposed to this game called Animal Crossing, which everyone was playing around those days. I hope you played it too. I don't know if you did.
I've heard amazing things, but if a game looks that good, I just don't touch it because I don't want to get another addiction. Like I already have Hearthstone, that's enough addiction
I know.
for me. Yeah.
I know. And super addictive game. Like my wife and I spent days and nights like waking up at night playing the game forever. But anyways, I don't want to get into details. But the game basically allowed me to experience virtual life in a very different way. In a very short amount of time, when we set up our island on the game, we recreated all the real world experiences that we have had in the past into this virtual island that we were able to design on the game. So having a zone for live drawing, having a zone for sketch bomb, doing all that kind of like stuff, like having a tour for the museum and like a shop and all. So all of those things made me feel that yeah, I'm able to recreate my real life experiences into a virtual world. And as a result of it, the next upgrade was playing with a lot of virtual friends who would come over to the island, and then you go do fishing with them. And I felt the power of virtual world in that way after experiencing that game to that core, because yeah, there were some new relationships which were getting made, some new friendships which are taking place just on this virtual platform. So based on this, when I came back here, I thought that what if whatever happens good on the on-site world can all be continued and followed in this remote world setup, even though this can be more challenging. So, for example, the biggest challenge on the remote work is number of meetings, right? Like if you don't have any control, they just go out of your hands, and even every artist who is not supposed to be a manager ends up having tons of things on their calendar, and they are swamped by those number of meetings they have to go and attend. And then when do they find times for hands-on? So this is a challenge, right? But despite this and despite more meetings getting added, I wanted to continue on a few things that generally happens in real on-site scenarios. For example, doing retrospectives or doing one-on-ones or doing proper sprint plannings and end of year surveys, team building offsites, like things which will actually populate your calendar, but they will have a lot of value going forward. So I thought that, yeah, no matter what, I'm not gonna, like, of course, people are gonna cut down on their commute time and they're gonna continue work and all. And I want them to have focus at work, but I don't want to miss out on these things created for them. So at least my style of management still applies all those on site experiences. But then apart from it, there are many virtual tools that allow us to be better and different as compared to what you can do offsite, which is,
Any
for
amazing
example,
tools? Yeah, I wanted to ask that.
yeah,
What amazing tools?
I think, for example, flexibility is one thing which allows you to just organize yourself in the way you want to. There are lots of collaboration tools which are very powerful. You can go together on a canvas and draw together with the people. So a lot of time we are able to do some brainstorming, which is even more effective than doing on a whiteboard in a room. Opening up something like, for example, like magma.com, which is like a online collaboration Photoshop. So you can just go and sit and draw on it all together. Like everyone's cursor is moving at the same time, and you can brainstorm and think about ideas all together by yourself. So all of those things were like heavily facilitators, like stuff like this, which were empowering us to even work remotely more effectively. So my talk was basically focused on those things, like things that we are doing in combination to what was happening on site, but also some examples of what we can do more remote.
So bringing that on-site experience to the remote world. I want to recap for the audience. You mentioned 3 tools there. So what were the 3 tools you used for remote work?
Yeah. So basically, like for example, the one of them is the magma.com, which is like an online Photoshop tool where you can draw on, and also organizing a lot on Miro. I think that helps a lot, like doing that kind of like stuff. There's a lot of potential on Slack. I think Slack is people really don't entirely use all of the facilities and tools, but some powerful tools like scheduling messages, very very effective. There are
How
times
is it
when you want
effective
to.
in the context of art?
Not really in the context of art, but general operation and work, I would say. So, um, for example, something struck my mind, but I probably don't want to send it to that person right now. I want to respect that person's unavailability at the moment, and I don't want them to be bothered that they are obliged to respond to this right now. This way, scheduling really, really helps. And tons of my messages that I'm communicating to the team are all scheduled. They were probably thought upon at a time when I didn't want to send them right now, but they are all planned for the groups, for the individuals, and stuff like this. And the same applies for Remind Me. That's another amazing feature on Slack, by the way, where
Mm-hmm.
you receive a message and partially it creates like a to-do list that you won't forget. So because it's always there until you have marked this as done, like marked as complete.
Right.
And
And
that's
it's
very
a
effective.
DM, which is very powerful. Like I have a to-do list, so I use Todoist, but I
Mm.
have to open it. But when you do it on Slack, it's like a DM, and it's like, oh, my brain has already learned through 3 years of social media. If I have an unread message, I need to get rid of it. So yeah, very powerful when someone sends you like a task. You're like, I need to do that tomorrow. Remind me tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And in a way, you are receiving those messages. Sometimes their messages are even coming when you are at work, but maybe you are on another call with someone and you don't want to forget about this message. So that was very super effective. Also, I was surprised by one of my colleague. His name is Yaden, and he actually started creating video feedback, which was very impressive when I saw that. So
Using Loom.
earlier, like Yarden Weidenfeld. So if I'm saying his last name correctly, but Yarden is what his first name is.
Sorry, is he using the tool called Loom for the video
No,
feedback?
he's doing Slack. He's using Slack right now. So
Oh,
Slack has an
you can
ability
send
to.
video message. Did not know that.
Yeah,
Very
it
cool.
was impressive, and it also creates transcription. So it creates some auto
Yes, that's a
captions.
very cool thing about Slack. Like when I send a voice memo to someone, I did it once and I was like, oh, wait, it's automatic. Like I have a
Yeah,
tool that does it for me on WhatsApp, which I have to pay for, but Slack does it for free. So very cool
yeah,
feature.
yeah, exactly. So what do athletes do? They generally maybe create a paint over, draw over, feedback for them, and then they attach a final image and then write a long caption. That requires you to do double effort, where you have done the feedback draw over, for example, but then you have to sit through and write all in bullet point with all the description and everything. But then yeah, then kind of like combine these things a bit together by composing video. So what he started to do was he went on to first of all go over the feedback, like create something on Photoshop in his personal time. But then instead of writing everything down, he went for a recorded video of himself, just like this podcast. And it feels like a tutorial in itself, where he's describing about the work that he received, and then the new changes that he recommends, and then so it opens a bit more. Like it's not like a checklist; it's a dialogue between the person. And even this video is gonna get received by the certain person in a separate situation, and the artist, he or she, will read it and listen to the video afterward, but there's this kind of connection where the person is talking with that person directly. Very nice. Yeah, very impressive.
I love using Loom. I use it a lot in my ghostwriting business. So when I ever need to communicate, like I added a new course called Warm Outreach. There's going to be like, rather than me telling them what to do, I'm like, I just walk them through the process and I'm just talking
Right.
to them like it's a normal person. And then on Loom, it goes automatically to 1.2 speed. There's a transcription. They can reply on the video. Overpowered. Yeah. If I ever
Yeah.
need to send a message that's even a little bit complicated, I'm just going to send a 2-3 minute loom. It's just so much nicer. And obviously,
Yeah.
we can use Slack as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic. I wanted to go zoom out a little bit here. So, you've been in the mobile gaming space. Like, why do you feel mobile gaming is so dominant? And what future challenges do you see?
It's not that I feel that this is most dominant. I think I appreciate all form of entertainment, and I find they have a certain space. um, if this is about why I am choosing to be in the mobile space, so I'll try to answer on that part, and then also on the success of mobile. Why I am choosing to be in the mobile space, it happened a bit by choices, of course, by choosing the employers and then setting a focus. But also, I felt that like it's better to continue to define your niche and get into specialization as you go further and further. Um, for example, well, first I was a very broad artist, probably wanting to do anything from mascot design to caricatures to storyboards to book illustrations to whatnot. And then your focus area is pretty wide, like you are doing all those kind of work, but then you are not the expert of a certain subject. And when it got narrowed down into, for example, just games, that became an area where, okay, as I now go further in my career, I will know more and more about the elements of games, and this way I can probably excel more in my career ladder because I'll be gaining a lot of information and knowledge, which maybe in the long term, when I have gain more experience, no one else will have the same knowledge. So narrowing down is always going to be helpful. So it went on to games for to start and begin with, and then in the games it opened into genres where, okay, where can I go, like platforms. Mobile is one, console is another, slot games is another, for example, board games are another. So again, narrowing down and then going on to mobile games. And even mobile right now, I mean, currently at least I'm focused on casual. um, and that actually still makes it even more niche and even more specialized in a certain thing, because then I can just closely observe what happens on the casual landscape. I can just get to know more about what do the audiences like, how do game companies work in the casual landscape, what are the KPIs, what are the lingos that people use in the company when they're developing a casual game. In that case, acquiring more and more knowledge limits you and restricts you, but also allows you to be more specialized and more focused, like a laser beam. I think that that's generally overall helpful in my opinion, as you continue to specialize, because then you become a bit more unique and that way. But about mobile games in general being dominant, well, it's true. I think it's one of the biggest industry. I mean, of course I'm not like a business person, so I can't probably describe that in a very business language. But mm looking at how the consumer space for electronics and all of that stuff have been, the form of entertainment, like how it continues on. People have very less attention span. Barely people like sit and watch through long forms of films. Obviously, there's still like this media and all. I think that case, games in general, and also a huge amount of audiences who just want to have a little bite-sized fun. In that case, like mobile games offer them this kind of like relief and relaxation between their work, before they're going to bed, so you can do a lot of your life errands, and between all of this thing you can just continue to play games. That way um, it has a great kind of like a factor, which is very different from the focus it needs in order to watch a movie or read a book, for example. So that way, it's an incredibly interesting industry, and also performing very well commercially, at least as of now. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. There are also ups and downs, but yeah, it is currently a successful revenue generating platform. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've only been in the mobile gaming space as a recruiter. I used to recruit Unity developers pretty much exclusively. And whenever I was seeing like where the money is flowing, I always felt like mobile was the place. I usually dedicate some of the part of the podcast, especially near the end, to young people. So if you're, let's say you have a son, he wants to go into art, he's like, hey dad, there's AI coming in up, there's less jobs now, it's 2024. What do you think I should do if I want to get my first role? Like, how should I become a good artist? What do you think I should be doing?
I think at least definitely in my case, I'm gonna go very traditional approach. I'm gonna let him do the foundation and basics and have all of those things strong enough. Then it's upon on how the world has progressed and went further. Like a lot of people say kids should not watch television, they should not look at the screens and stuff, but really, like sometimes maybe there are certain benefits, like if you totally keep them away from using ipad or whatever, then in a way you are also restricting them from what the technology allows you to have today. Like they are not experiencing procreate. Like I don't want my kid to like not know anything of those at all. He should know what's on the television today, what content and shows are
When
most
you're
children
saying young
watching.
people, what age are you thinking there? Like, are you thinking like teenage? I was thinking because that's a good idea. Like, if you want to become an amazing artist, you get like an extra 5 years on Procreate at age 13. You'd be probably killing it.
Yeah, I mean, even more younger kids. Like I think my son is right now 3 years old, and
Hmm.
he still goes to Procreate, and I teach him the tools, and he's
He's
learning
gonna have
about those
20
things.
years. Once he's 23, he's gonna be like, "Yep, I've been drawing for 20 years." That's
Yeah,
amazing. Yeah,
that's funny, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah,
That,
yeah,
no, that actually makes a good point. Like we have that for sports, right? No one says anything about the kid who's been exercising since 5 years old and then wins the Olympics at 20, but they literally became an adult 2 years before that, but they've been training for 15 years. So
yeah,
it's a good point. Like if an artist is involved in it, then just start, I guess, like
yeah.
as soon as you
I think
can.
fundamentally people should be still aware of the choices. I think those aesthetic knowledge and those things should exist. Even I encourage people to possess classical knowledge, like not about the medium. I'm talking about even what happened in the history. Like even if it's of no use for today, it's always good to know how the art evolved. What were the movements? What were the decisions which led to certain formation of those art forms? Was it war? Was it politics? Was it human and advancement? How those movement happens? I think those things are always important. And if you are able to combine what happened in the past with what's happening today and what can the future have unfold for you, you can be just very unique in yourself, which will put you further ahead of anyone else.
Exactly. Amazing. So, in terms of, I guess, art directors, so maybe not the art. So, if I'm an artist and I want to become a great leader, like, is there any lessons you've learned about being a great leader that you wish you learned sooner?
I think the biggest thing that comes to leadership and art direction in general, and also being successful at it, is decision making. I think, and that is a difficult thing to actually teach anyone, because you can't give them examples about, okay, in this case make this decision. It's always something that will come practically in front of you. And those who are able to make the right decision at right point of time are able to succeed further. They have more success results. They accomplish more. And then when you make bad decisions or wrong decisions, then obviously it slows you down on the career, or you have a more disappointing experience at certain places, or you feel lost or locked, or you want to come back. I think this is the only thing which is hard to learn, or even like hard to know. But anything that is going around at your work always leads to some choices. Like the choices to either do this or do this. Sometimes the choices are not to prioritize this but to prioritize this, or to try this and not to try this, like things like these. And these are generally the moments where you have to just choose. And if you choose the right option among all of those options which would lead to success, it's going to go well for you. Those choices are less encountered when you are as an artist, because then you can rely on your lead to tell you on what how we should do this. But as a director, you have to make those decisions, and that can fail your company or fail your studio, or solve the problems and survive your studio. So that's basically my take overall. Like having the right ability to make the right decision in time. I think that's the fact which I believe is integral for an art director.
So, if decision making is integral, like, like how do we make the right decisions? Like you mentioned, making the right decision in time. Is there a time element here? Like we shouldn't wait too long to make decisions.
Sometimes it comes around, maybe not about time in general. Like obviously, naturally, you have to make decisions right in time. Like you can't delay it too long. But um, it's more about, sometimes the decisions are influenced by how your past has been. You might have encountered a very similar situation, which makes your brain think that, yeah, this is the danger zone, and this is where the result may come in. So I should try this, and I should not try this. Sometimes it's more about, now your gut feeling says, let's probably not do that. So it's hard. I think some of the stuff is based on your past experiences, but some of the stuff is when you evaluate your current circumstances, when you know what the stakeholders are gonna feel if I make this decision, how risky of a move this one is, how much can I trust on the success percentage if I'm gonna choose this kind of path with the artist. And this is where you probably go and say, hey, the work is being expected today, but let's do this until tomorrow. It's on me. I know I'm taking the risk, but I think that if we show them today, we will get some amount of feedback which will delay us by 2 days, and then the work will finish in a couple of days. But if we take this cushion and then work until tomorrow and do this, and this, then probably tomorrow when we go for the review, we will have an instant approval. So I'm just giving a very random example, but like these are the kind of like decisions and situations that come around you where you have to choose what's right or not. Sometimes it's driven by the style, sometimes it's driven by um, the concept that you have created, like stuff like this. It's just that you have to choose. You have to choose a lot on almost every moment.
So I guess getting in the reps maybe, or seeing what decisions your leaders have made and figuring out why. That's the only thing I can think of to kind of get ahead of yourself rather than learning on the job, which I feel like many people do in the games industry. Like you get promoted to a lead and they're like, good luck. So if you want to get the muscle before then, it's understanding that decision process sounds important.
Yeah, yeah. Also, there's like a stepping stone where from an artist you get into the direction role, and this is where some of the characteristics of an artist come into play, like those who are more organized, more systematic, more responsible, more trustworthy. I mean, I'm not saying that like others cannot be trustworthy, but it's like the kind of like relationship where you can build that the stakeholders of your company can trust on giving you the the title basically, or even sometimes the title don't come. Like in many cases the title don't come. You have to be in that role for a certain period of time, and then it naturally comes to you. That happened with me many times. Like I was not crowned as an athlete to start from. It was just that I was doing everything that an athlete should be doing, and therefore it naturally got assumed that this person is an athlete, and then the HR had to reconsider to put that title onto the paper. So this is how it goes. But I think those are the moments where when you're organized, systematic, even when you have an equivalent peer in your team who is probably at the same title at the moment, but if you are giving them inputs, if you're guiding them, if you're supporting them, this is where people see that, yeah, she or he has a trait for being leader.
I think that's important to reiterate. You were an unofficial art lead before you got the promotion. So I would
Always, I think
expect,
this is always the case. Yeah, it's
yeah,
never going to be the case where no, I will only exercise or show these traits until I'm crowned. Like it never works like that. I think it's always about already starting to do that into your studio. Raise your hand, be the first person to come forward, and then take initiatives and do all of these kind of like things. And then you are seen as a person who can lead it.
amazing. I think that's just something that's just very worth mentioning. That's applicable to everyone. Like I've heard so many people talk about their promotion trajectory, and it's always been through stuff like that where they've raised their hand, said yes, did more things, and then people like, we have to give you this promotion because you have. I want to give you more responsibilities, like almost like a gift to give you the promotion. So that's the situation we want to be in.
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing. How do you wind down after like drawing for like 8 hours? Like, what do you do after work?
Oh yeah. So currently, I generally spend time with my family when I'm back home, especially with my kid. He's always waiting for me to come around and play with him. Um, Also, generally trying to help him draw. I think he's a big inspiration for me that way. When when I see him committed. I think children can teach you a lot if you see from that from angle on how their can-do attitude and how they're problem solving. One of the biggest things that I talk with my wife about, how children are a great example of when they're practicing something, they can perfect it. So that's something that always gives you a lesson. So I think I'm more on the student side whenever I see him. That's one of the great things. Apart from this, on the weekend, sometimes recording podcasts, sometimes I mean, I have my studio for myself, so generally I'm exploring some tech gadgets and reading a book or playing some games with family and friends. I'm a big time board gamer, so once in a while we organize some board game sessions at home, and some friends come in, and it's like a time when we are away from the screens and devices and just having a great time. So that's mostly like it. I used to travel a lot, but not doing that as much as often right now. I wish I can do more.
You coming to Gamescom?
Oh, actually, I am traveling to Thailand around the same days.
Ooh, okay.
So,
You're still
yeah,
traveling then. That's all good.
yeah. But next year for sure. I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. No, no, it'll be good to see you there. Shiraj, thank you so much. Where can people go and find out more about you and your podcast?
So about the podcast, it's mainly on YouTube. It's also on more audio platform, but the video one is the one where I'm most focused on. So it's on youtube.com/@doodles to downloads. That's the name of the podcast. Apart from it, I'm on LinkedIn. I am available on email. Sometimes I do accept some meeting invites on cal.com. So if someone wants to have like some sort of like a portfolio review advice or whatever, they want to hang out and ask some questions. So I let them choose a slot from my calendar and just book like a 15 minutes, half an hour, whatever. So yeah, LinkedIn and YouTube.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Anything you want to leave everyone with? Anything that we didn't cover today?
Um, Not really. I think the only thing which I would like to say is be a better person more than be a better person in profession or craft. So I think that has a huge importance in this is what the world needs right now. So always make those right choices where you are being kind and helping the world be a better place.
I agree. And if you are like me and you want to make it a bit more optimistic, sorry, a bit more salesy, it is selfish to be selfless. If you have that mindset, good things will happen to you anyway. So it's even a good reason to do that. So that's a great way
Absolutely.
to end it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you a lot. Thanks a lot, Harry. Have a great day.